EigenLayer is to security what Valence is to liquidity. Multisigs aren't great for a lot of reasons, but one of the underappreciated reasons why multisigs aren't great is that they can't respond in real time. You can't have efficient markets for these sorts of deals, especially in situations where you might want to create a market for borrowing a protocol's liquidity. The end game where I think this is going is that every single crypto native organization that has a token will be borrowing and or lending liquidity to other crypto native organizations.
Welcome to the Interop. Today my guest is Max Einhorn. He is a co-founder of Timewave and a contributor to Valence. Valence is an up-and-coming protocol that enables other protocols, so blockchains, to engage in programmatic economic activity or commerce amongst each other. It's a really interesting idea, and this is actually the first podcast that they're doing. So we're going to go deep here and really understand the backstory, what is Valence, and what it enables long-term. Before we get started, though, make sure to subscribe to get notified when new episodes drop every week. And remember, none of what we're discussing on the Interop is investment advice. And if you like this content, please consider staking with us. We're validating on a handful of networks. Nebula Summit's coming up in July in Brussels. That's July 12th and 13th is the Interchain Builders Conference, where developers and founders get together to talk about big ideas in the modular ecosystem and Cosmos. If you haven't got your tickets yet, you can get them at nebula.builders. And actually, Max will be giving a talk there. Will this be the first time you talk about Valence up on stage?
This will be the very first talk about Valence on stage, yeah.
Man, so many firsts. I feel like this is like lots of alpha here is going to happen today. So yeah, let's start off with a bit of background. How did you start Timewave and start building Valence?
Yeah, I've been in crypto for the past 7 years. I've been doing a little bit of everything. And a little over 2 years ago, I just reached a point where I wanted to start embarking on something that I felt as though I was uniquely capable of building. And my co-founder of my first crypto company, he was a core dev at Olympus DAO. And we were just jamming on algorithmic monetary policy and bonds. And I was asking myself, why doesn't Cosmos have this? And so I started implementing a Cosmosm version of Olympus DAO. And as I was doing that, I met Zucky. Zucky thought it was really cool. He introduced me to a lot of the core Cosmos guys. They thought it was cool, and they invited me to co-author the Cosmos Hub white paper. And when applying these ideas to the Cosmos Hub, there was this opportunity to really expand the scope and scale of this initial idea. And my main contribution to that Cosmos Hub white paper was the interchain allocator. And the idea there was about programmatic economic activity between blockchains, protocols, dApps, DAOs, like these crypto native organizations.
Wait, you're talking about the Atom 2.0 white paper?
That was the Atom 2.0 white paper.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And when the proposal failed, I maintained conviction that the interchain allocator was going to be really important. And so together with some of my co-authors on that paper, Sam Hart and Udit Vira, we just had a weekly call where we just kept this idea alive, started sharing with others in the Cosmos ecosystem some of the things that we were thinking about. And we've just been building it ever since.
Yeah, cool. I mean, we talked a lot about Cosmos 2.0 here on this podcast. I feel like we beat that dead horse for a pretty long time. In fact, like I interviewed Zaki at Cosmoverse, like minutes after coming off stage. So I feel like I got sort of the, all different perspectives of that paper. And the allocator really to me was felt like something that was needed, at that time when the paper came out. There were a lot of questions around the Cosmos Hub's community pool and the ability of the community to be the right stewards of that capital and being able to properly allocate it. I feel like there were a lot of discussions circa end of 2021 when was that, 2022, beginning of 2023, around how to make capital allocation better with like sub DAOs and DAO and all this stuff. But it has kind of subsided. There aren't that many conversations around that anymore, I think. I mean, from my perspective, I don't know if, like, do you share that? Do you share that sentiment? And, why do you think that is?
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of people that contributed to that paper, and my main focus on it was from this more really deep DeFi perspective of the allocator. And so, because the allocator and this whole idea became so politically charged with what ended up going down with Atom 2.0, I've really focused on sort of like staying in my lane of, okay, I think this allocator, I think the ability for protocols to interact with other protocols is very important. We already have IBC, so you can send assets from one chain to another. You can then send it back from that chain back. But doing it programmatically and then making sure the destination might be some sort of positive sum destination. So, for example, one protocol putting in $1 million of its native token and another protocol putting in $1 million worth of its native token, and together creating $2 million of liquidity on a DEX. Things like that would really unlock, because without something like this, you might be sort of in a standoff where like, hey, like I will do this, but only if you do that. But who's going to go first? By having trustless smart contracts do this, you don't have that standoff situation. And also, like right now, these deals are possible, but only with intermediary multisigs. And multisigs aren't great for a lot of reasons. But one of the underappreciated reasons why multisigs aren't great is that they can't respond in real time. If you can't respond in real time, you can't have efficient markets for these sorts of deals, especially in situations where you might want to create a market for borrowing a protocol's liquidity. So we can get into all of this, but that's really been my focus. That's what my team at Timewave has been focusing on. Timewave is the development company. Valence is the protocol. That's the relationship there. And in Valence, it definitely is different than the allocator, but the allocator was the original idea. Valence is now an upgraded, larger, more expansive, protocolized version of the allocator.
Right. Well, let's get into that. A protocolized version of the allocator. So from that, I hear that the allocator was sort of like an initial idea about how we can be more efficient at allocating protocol-owned liquidity and into like various different use cases and applications for that, and how do we transform that into something that is programmatic, that can be controlled by governance, that can be interoperable across different ecosystems. How do you get from the sort of allocator idea to like the end game, and what does the end game look like? Maybe we're starting from the end here, but like, I think it will help us get a better understanding as we go through like what Valence is and how the protocol works. But like, what do you see as the end game? Valence fully deployed and like connected to different chains and protocols.
Yeah, the end game where I think this is going is that every single crypto native organization that has a token will be borrowing and or lending liquidity to other crypto native organizations. I think that is where we're going. So similar to how in TradFi, it's not just individuals doing business with each other. There are also businesses and governments, so institutional capital markets that exist. And these institutional markets are usually larger. Like the institutional debt market is twice the size of the individual and household market, for example. Almost all of crypto is pretty much just that individual household market. We don't really have the crypto native institutions, so the dApps, DAOs, protocols engaging in DeFi. And they're not engaging in DeFi because they have these structural disadvantages. You often have a public trading policy, and so you can get front run. Like I said, you need multi-sigs, and multi-sigs aren't great. And you also have these really clunky, big one-off proposals with arbitrary numbers, inefficient negotiation, lack of clarity, lack of standardization. And so there's just a lot of value being left on the table. But these deals are still getting done at a surprising rate because there is so much natural demand pushing us in this direction. And so one of the ways I often describe what the work we're doing at Timewave to build Valence is that, and we compare it to EigenLayer and just shared security generally. So EigenLayer is to security what Valence is to liquidity. And we have this comparison because people have been talking about data DAO deals for a while. You can see things as early as like 2017, 2018, talking about this. But it's only now with the rise of shared security and restaking that this protocol to protocol market is really becoming obvious to people. And this like restaking, it's protocol to protocol, right? One protocol is borrowing security from another protocol. And shared security induces demand for shared liquidity. And we've seen this with the Stride deal and the Cosmos Hub. A condition of Stride borrowing security from the Cosmos Hub was getting 450,000 Atom in protocol-owned liquidity that Stride isn't allowed to just spend willy-nilly. It's going to a very specific location to bootstrap Atom, staked Atom liquidity on Astroport. So this sort of shared liquidity is going to become an increasingly important part of these shared security deals. And I know we started at the end here, but just to bring this to the beginning, this really started with a set of core values that my co-founders and I and our team share. And these really boil down to three things, which is long-term, permissionless collaboration. We want to play long-term games. We want to have like long-term relationships. We want to do long-term business. In terms of permissionlessness, we see this as wanting to contribute to this infinite frontier. You know, like meritocracy, like let the best man win. Like really preserve that as an option. And then collaboration, so working together with each other to build something that would be impossible alone. That is more than the sum of our parts. And that's evident in how we got here because I embarked on this journey just solo building this Olympus DAO clone. I met Zucky and he gave me this opportunity. And so let me make sure that I build something that is conducive to Zucky and his goals. Then I met the rest of the core Cosmos team. And I was like, okay, what can we do together that's positive sum? And now this continues. Like, how can we build Valence in a way that others who share our values of coming together, collaborating, build something better, have the tools to do so? So that's where it starts with these values, and that end game of institutional capital is where we're going.
No, that's clear. So with regards to what you were saying that like most of the crypto DeFi market right now is kind of the retail market or like the household market, compared to traditional finance. Looking at that comparison and going sort of deeper in that comparison, bringing in crypto institutional capital introduces like a lot of benefits. You have like extra liquidity, markets maybe also better funded, more stable. But what kind of like systemic risks might that involve? And the systemic risks, I mean, I'm not talking about like the systemic risks that we know about kind of TradFi, but that are unique to blockchains, right? Like by introducing this kind of crypto institutional capital, the underlying liquidity that is securing the market itself into crypto markets, like what kind of systemic risks do you anticipate that might create?
That's an interesting question. So first to clarify, so there are traditional institutions participating in crypto, like these ETFs being obvious examples. So I'm not referring to those institutions. When I talk about crypto native institutions, I'm talking about crypto native organizations like dApps, DAOs, and protocols. And so when these crypto native organizations begin participating in financial markets, there are some obvious advantages, and then there are also some risks. So in that example that I shared earlier of, let's say it is, this is a real deal. So Neutron and Osmosis each put in equal dollar value amounts of their native token and are bootstrapping liquidity for the Neutron Osmosis pair. When they're doing this, from one perspective, this cost neither party any money to now increase the liquidity of the pair between the two. I think it was $250,000 each. So I think that there's a $500,000 extra liquidity for this Neutron Osmo pair. Neutron and Osmosis, they had these tokens on their balance sheets. It cost them nothing to put this in, and so now there's more liquidity. So there are advantages there, but there are risks. So what if Osmosis were to just dump on Neutron, and Neutron would then have all this impermanent loss that might eventually turn into real losses? Like that is a real situation. That's a real possibility. And so when it comes to these deals, they are trust minimized in the fact that there is no multi-sig in the middle. I think in this specific example, there is a multi-sig, but with Valence, we are eliminating the need for the multi-sig. So the actual mechanics of this might be trustless, trust minimized, but there is still some trust that like your counterparty will not dump, or that the members of that group will not dump. So there still is risk involved, and so you need to be smart about it. But there are also additional mechanisms that you can put in place to reduce that risk. For example, perhaps you make sure that your counterparty incurs any impermanent loss. Or you might, one party might charge the other party interest, so that now it's not just fees on that LP position that are going to be needed to cover any impermanent loss, but it's fees plus interest. And that deal structure makes sense when one party has a more liquid token than the other party. All else equal, the one with a less liquid token is getting more out of the deal since now there's more liquidity. And so in situations like that, charging interest would make it worthwhile. So there are new risks involved when crypto native organizations participate, but it's also an opportunity for a massive design space for mechanisms to help give protocols unfair advantages to counteract their structural disadvantages when participating in DeFi.
So talking about this design space, can you expand a little bit on the types of things that Valence enables that have not been possible up until now with the kind of traditional manual sort of deals that protocols have had to engage in that don't have this programmatic, trust minimized kind of property that Valence enables?
Yeah. So again, this started with this big idea, this research concept called the interchain allocator. And when we shared that, there was just a lot going on with Atom 2 and all that. And one view on that was that it was just a little ahead of its time, a little too big. And so we took that as our feedback. And as a next step, what we did was break up the allocator into two smaller pieces that could be of immediate value to protocols today. And those two pieces were the covenant system and the rebalancer. The rebalancer is portfolio management for DAOs. So you can set a desired portfolio, and then the rebalancer will get you there gradually over time or fast, whatever speed you want. And then the covenant system is for just the deployment of liquidity or the lending and borrowing of assets. So when the hub wants to deploy 450,000 Atom POL unilaterally to that Atom staked Atom position on Astroports, they have been relying on Atom Accelerator DAO as the multi-sig to facilitate that deal. And soon they will be able to migrate off of that multi-sig onto a set of smart contracts. So you will not have trusted humans in the middle. It also enables
trusted humans. Can't trust those humans.
Trusted humans. I mean, if you trust the humans, great, but we do so much work to remove the humans in the middle, and there is so much potential for active monetary policies and this institutional layer of crypto. You're not going to get there if you have humans in the middle dealing with these mission critical things. So you're going to want smart contracts in there. So yeah, it handles these unilateral situations where like one party just chooses to deploy liquidity there. It handles bilateral situations where one protocol will do something if another protocol does something, like that two-party protocol and liquidity situation I was mentioning before. And so we've built both of those. The rebalancer's live on mainnet today. Covenants live on mainnet today. We just completed our third successful covenant the other day between Neutron and Shade. And now that we have sort of created these two separate products, we are now in the process of re-merging them into one integrated whole. It's not the interchain allocator, it's the Valence protocol. And you can go to valence.zone today and check out beta versions of these, so that it requires a little less imagination to understand what it is that we're talking about. And where this is heading is that right now these are compatible with any Cosmos chain that has, basically any chain that has interchain accounts or Polytone. If you have either of those, the Rebalancer and the Covenants work for you. However, we want to learn lessons that came in the past, and something that the Cosmos Hub did was build their shared security offering in a way that you could only borrow security from the Cosmos Hub, and that gave a lot of room for EigenLayer and others to come in and really eat their lunch from a shared security perspective. And so with us doing shared liquidity, we're starting in this Cosmos way just because that's where a lot of our friends are. That's where we think this technology is going and is the most scalable tech stack for this. But we're now building this in such a way where it'll be just as useful for a Bitcoin L2 or an ETH protocol or a Solana DAO to use this. And we can get into some of those details if you're interested. But this is our goal for this is not just to be a Cosmos thing. This is a liquidity interoperability layer across all of crypto.
Okay, so just kind of like looking at the covenants and rebalancer. So the rebalancer allows the protocol to like get in and out of position. So I think one use case here is, let's say you're at the Cosmos Hub and you're holding Atom. You might want to like sell that Atom as the price is going up, right? Like you might want to be getting out of that position as we're entering like a bull market to have like dollar liquidity and not get wrecked on the way down. And similarly, like as prices are coming down, the hub might be selling its dollar position to get back into Atom, into a more volatile token. Is that like kind of the main use case here, to sort of like rebalance the portfolio in a way that allows protocols to be smarter about how they manage their treasury, depending on like market conditions?
So that is the initial use case, but not the primary use case. So we wanted to start with something very simple, very straightforward that people would understand, and it is exactly what you described. Like, I want 5% of my treasury to be in stables, and so rebalance me into that, my treasury into that gradually, quickly, however you want, but we'll do that as efficiently as possible. So that's how we're starting, because it's simple. However, the direction that this could go is saying, hey, I want to direct 1% of my inflation to this pool, and at that pool, I want half of that to be POL into Neutron, a quarter of that to be POL into Osmosis, another quarter of that to be POL with a liquid staking token. Just coming up with your portfolio. This doesn't have to be raw tokens. These could be strategy tokens. It really could be anything. The real key here is that bring covenants into this. So the machinery for covenants is essentially going to become the machinery to initiate these protocol relationships. And then the rebalancer machinery is going to be machinery that maintains these relationships over time. So we have these initial immediate value use cases for each of them, but these are just going to be sub protocols of the Valence protocol.
Okay, that's more clear. So it's more like we can do much more than just like allocate a certain portion of the portfolio in stables or like this token or that token, but also allocate liquidity into liquidity pools and rebalance that portfolio based on like the amount of tokens in the pool, like sort of like managing impermanent loss, etc.
Exactly. We there was a DAO that reached out to us the other day, and they were saying, "Hey, we want to buy Bitcoin when it is less than $55,000." Things like that we can't support today, but we are in the process of supporting that. So you can define whatever sort of strategy you want, and between the machinery we already have and what we're going to be developing over the next few months, we will be able to do that no matter where the chain is.
All right, and so the covenant Can you describe like what that part of the protocol does?
So you can think of the rebalancer as mostly like this single party tool. Like I, as a crypto native organization, I just unilaterally use this rebalancer and it manages my portfolio. It might have, I might want exposure to different chains, but this is something my organization just uses. The Covenant system, it can be a single player game, like what the Cosmos Hub is doing, just unilaterally deploying liquidity into this staked Atom pair on Astroport. But it could also be bilateral, it could be multilateral. And what it is basically programmatic deal making between crypto native organizations. So Osmosis could say, hey, Neutron, we will give you 250,000 Atom of our, $250,000 worth of Osmo if you put in $250,000 worth of Neutron. And once both of these happen, we will then put all 500 grand to bootstrap Osmo Neutron liquidity on Astroport, on Osmosis. You can choose the DEX. So the Covenant system is what enables that to happen programmatically.
Okay, and is there like particular interactions between the Covenant system and the rebalancer that might not be obvious here?
So right now, these are in completely separate products. And we did it separately just so that it'd be easier to communicate, it'd be easier to execute, it would be a clearer value add for each one, and it doesn't require gigabrain thinking. We don't need to do all that. So today, they are totally separate products. They're both featured on the Valence website because over time, these will merge into just subsystems of the Valence protocol. And so machinery from Covenants will initiate these DAO-to-DAO agreements, and then machinery from the rebalancer will adjust these over time based on the conditions that are set. And as these integrate, we're going to be able to unlock things where you don't just need point-to-point integrations, because right now it's only really compatible with Astroport and to some degree Osmosis. And from a liquid staking perspective, it's integrated with Stride and Persistence. We've gotten a lot of demand for some pretty exotic positions and just some very creative things that we didn't really anticipate. And so to keep up with this demand, it would not scale for us to continue integrating protocols one at a time. And so instead, what we're doing and working on today is an intent-based architecture, where basically a protocol can approach Valence, express an intent to say, hey, I want to do this if someone else does that. And then we'll have a marketplace of solvers. You can think of these as arbitrageurs that will bid on the right to execute that intent. That solver will then, once they execute that intent, they will then capture the spread between what it costs them to execute that intent and what that protocol was willing to pay. And that is how we will get to any chain, anywhere. We offload a lot of the complexity to these solvers, but still have the on-chain logic necessary to verify that the required actions have happened and release the funds accordingly.
Okay, so then Valence sort of in its end state kind of becomes this marketplace for solvers that have a very specific kind of purpose, right? And that purpose is to rebalance portfolio positions of protocols and execute these Covenant transactions. Is that an accurate representation of like what the end state is? It's like all that programmatic aspect sort of moves onto the solver network.
So you are right, but I wouldn't necessarily call it the end state. I'd maybe call that the medium state. So right now, you can use everything that we're building for free. These are, for the most part, public goods, and you can use it totally free of charge. We really want we want to see our values out there. We want to attract the people and projects that share our values. In the medium term, we are going to be working towards this intent-based architecture, and we will have this solver market, and that is just a stepping stone to where we actually want to go. And the step thereafter would be offering leverage on these assets. And so it's you you as a protocol, you might have assets in the rebalancer, you might have assets in various covenants. And what a lot of protocols have told us is that they don't necessarily want to like sell too many of their tokens because their community might feel like they're being dumped on. They might want to sell a small amount as for a certain amount of OPEX and payment, but what they really want is leverage. And so once we get the ability to do deals with any chain anywhere, you might want leverage to do certain situations. And our goal is to enable Valence to give leverage on assets that are in the system. And so you start to do things such as like liquidity as a service, which I've done a forum post on, where you might charge interest for the borrowing of protocol-owned liquidity. There are a lot of things that you can do once leverage and interest can be charged.
Right. Okay. And one thing I wanted to, you mentioned intents, and like a protocol expressing an intent. How does a protocol express an intent? How do we get to this point, right? A human being can express an intent, but what are the different ways through which a protocol can express their intents?
Yeah. So just to stick with the same examples, so the Cosmos Hub has expressed an intent to put 450,000 Atom into the Atom staked Atom pool on Astroport. And to do that, they have sent this Atom. They did a community spend proposal to a multisig address, and it's the people on that multisig that are implementing that intent. Like that is as one way of doing an intent. Different ways, I think a more scalable way of doing these intents are having a protocol, so like a framework that will enable a protocol to basically say, hey, I have this asset here. I want as much as possible of this asset there. And by standardizing this, you can have solvers that could standardize their essentially like their solving machinery, their ability to arbitrage and look for opportunities to get that intent there. And the way the protocol would express that intent, it could be anything. You know, for the Cosmos Hub, the Cosmos Hub has certain on-chain governance. There are some protocols that have proof of authority. There are various ways that crypto native organizations choose to govern themselves. But however they choose to govern themselves, if that governing body passes something or agrees to do something, that can be expressed in the form of an intent that is compatible with our system, and then have our solver marketplace solve that intent.
Right. And so the supply chain of decision making that happens from the intent being expressed by a form of governance or proof of authority, multi-sig or something like that, right? Like how does that become binding? Does the protocol have to have an existing relationship with Valence, or this kind of like Cosmos SDK and IBC enable this transaction to be programmatically sent to Valence? Like, how does that relationship first get initiated and then executed upon once the intent or the governance proposal passes or what have you?
This is a great question. This is actually the question that we're answering internally right now. We have not finalized the specification for the Valence protocol yet, but one way, that the leading way that this is looking like it's going to go down is that let's say it is the let's say it's the Cosmos Hub. Let's stick with one example. The Cosmos Hub might express this intent, like we want to deploy 100,000 Atom to Osmosis. What the hub could do is pass that proposal. That proposal would direct Atom to a given address. That might be an address that stays on the hub. It might be an interchain account on Neutron, or an interchain account on Osmosis. It's any sort of account that the Valence protocol would have the authority to move funds from, to basically guarantee that those funds are available. Once Valence can guarantee that those funds are available, like has those funds in an account controlled by Valence, Valence would then communicate the remainder of that intent to say, hey, we have 100,000 Atom. we want to get this to osmosis in a way that the hub as a governing body will maintain control over. And then solvers will look at that intent and say, okay, I can get a million, I can get that to osmosis. And they'll bid, and the highest bidder might be just like a hair short of that amount. That bidder will then need to use their own funds to get to fill that intent. Let's say it's just the Cosmos Hub wanting it on osmosis. Maybe that solver will get 999,999.99. Like something very very close there. Once it's there, and they send a proof to the Valence protocol that the funds are there, that the amount of funds that they bid, they said that they would do, have made it there. Once we get that proof, once Valence gets that proof, they will then Valence will then unlock the initial funds, send those funds to the solver, and that solver now captures the spread between what the hub, the hub initially sent and what they bid to solve. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And so that this specification that you're building, will that work? I mean, I guess like working in Cosmos and having IBC and everything, that sort of, I think people can wrap their heads around how that works. But how does that extend outside of the IBC ecosystem, EVM chain, Solana?
Yeah, very good question. And this is going to get even further away from what we've finalized in our spec so far, but similar principles would apply. So long, like if let's say it's someone on Bitcoin has like one Bitcoin on this Bitcoin L2, and they want as much wrapped Bitcoin on some ETH L2 as possible. So long as that initial party is able to get that Bitcoin to an address that Valence controls, then Valence will be able to start an auction for that. So that address might stay on that Bitcoin L2. And the solver who solves the intent might actually want that Bitcoin on that same Bitcoin L2. So that Bitcoin may never actually leave that L2. But what will happen is that the initial owner of that Bitcoin will then own this wrapped Bitcoin on the ETH L2 that the solver had. And then the solver will now gain ownership of the Bitcoin on that Bitcoin L2 that they wanted there in the first place. All parties would be happy because the initial party now has the asset on the chain that they want at that destination that they want it on. And the solver is also happy because they were able to capture a spread and also have assets where it wants. So there are ways to do this that really minimize the cross-chain activity, that minimize the risk, minimize the gas needed. But again, we're working on the specification right now, so TBD how this very first version of Valence will work, but those principles apply. So long as Valence can control the asset, it can send the intent to the solver marketplace to then solve on behalf of the users.
Right. So I want to talk a little bit about Valence's architecture and like what this looks like at the protocol level. Is Valence itself an app chain that has a validator set and sort of secures its own that has its own economic security, or are you building Valence as like some kind of an L2, or is it like an outpost model? How does Valence kind of structured?
So at the moment, everything that is Valence is smart contracts, so cosmosm smart contracts on Neutron. And so for the deals that Valence has done already, deals between Shade and Neutron, Stargaze and Neutron, Noah's Protocol and Neutron, we've started there with Neutron as a counterparty because that's where our tech is. We have a partnership with them. It's been a real pleasure to work with Neutron. They've been really great. So everything is smart contracts there. It will probably remain that way for the foreseeable future. We're very happy with a partnership with them. Years down the road, TBD, like this could be its own chain. It could be a roll-up. It could be anything. But for the time being, it's all smart contracts on Neutron. It's essentially the big thing with Neutron is integrated applications. We are essentially an integrated application on Neutron.
So that means that Valence is sort of enshrined in the Neutron protocol? How would you like describe this sort of integrated idea?
Yeah, so the integrated by integrated application, what I mean is that usually projects need to choose between either writing smart contracts or building their own chain. And the way that Neutron has been positioning itself is that, hey, you don't have to make this choice. Neutron will give builders the ease of building that you get from just doing smart contracts, while also having the expressibility of being able to access things that smart contracts typically can't access. And so we are on Neutron leveraging a lot of these functionalities. Like I guess technically these could be yeah, it's its own app chain. It could be elsewhere, but Neutron has been very generous with their partnership. Their technology is giving us everything we need. It helps accelerate our go-to-market by not having to develop our own chain. It reduces our costs by not having to incentivize validators. There's a lot of ways in which this is a very symbiotic relationship, and that's how we've gotten to Neutron.
How do you feel about like building on the Cosmos hub these days? I know that might be a loaded question for some, but last year at Nebular, the last panel of the conference was something like, "Is Cosmos going to make it?" Or and during this panel, Zaki said that the hub had 12 months. I'm paraphrasing here, but like had 12 months to get its act together and find product market fit, and find a way to accrue value to the Atom token. Looking at markets today, maybe this is not the most representative of days, but Atom is trading at under $7. It has struggled to keep up with the rest of the market. I think kind of over the $10 range for a long time. I think it pushed at like 12 at some point, but my outlook for the hub has kind of shifted in the last couple of months, and I've become a lot less optimistic about it. I'm still hopeful that Informal's taking over of business development and really allocating resources there, particularly on partials like security. I'm hopeful that will help attract more projects building on the hub. But as the days go by, there's like less and less hope that, the hub can compete with the likes of EigenLayer and Babylon and all these new up and coming shared security systems. So, I mean, sorry, that's just sort of like a big rant there, but maybe just to put things in the context about how I feel about the hub right now. What are your thoughts on like what the future of the hub looks like? In 5 years from now, is the hub like a burgeoning sort of ecosystem of applications and an economy, and like Atom being widely accepted everywhere? I think that's kind of like Atom being a form of collateral that is used on a lot of across the Cosmos ecosystem, I guess like the bear case is Atom becoming like Ethos, right? Or not Ethos, EOS, right? Like this kind of zombie ecosystem. Maybe there's like somewhere in the middle that I'm not seeing, but I typically like to think in extremes. So, but yeah, sorry. What are your kind of outlooks here?
Yeah. So first, maybe some definitions. Like what is Cosmos? So in my mind, Cosmos is three things. First, it is a vision for an interchain. So we will live in a world that doesn't only have many blockchains, but also the connections between those blockchains and relationships between those blockchains is important. I think that is a consensus view at this point. So I think interchain is thriving, has backing, it is happening. I think the second part is the Cosmos SDK. And this is the software development kit that makes it easy for anyone to create their own blockchain. I think that this also seems to be doing quite well. It seems to be the preferred tech stack to build your own AVS. Babylon is using Cosmos SDK. Various high profile projects are using Cosmos SDK. So I'd say that also is relatively successful. And then third, you have the Cosmos Hub, which technically actually wasn't the first blockchain, but one of the first blockchains built using the Cosmos SDK. And in terms of the outlook for the Cosmos Hub, I mean, I really enjoyed working and meeting with a lot of the people there. I think there still is hope. I think there's hope in the form of Atom Wars. So this is basically the idea of liquidity as a service. Can the hub automate its deployment of protocol and liquidity in a way that will reinforce Atom as this collateral asset, also create a new source of upward pressure, so the interest payments paid, the tribute paid on the liquidity that you get could also be upward pressure on Atom token. So I think there are things that could be done there. But all of that said, I got a pretty big message from the whole Atom 2.0 thing that like, hey, like we don't want this, and it wasn't necessarily this specifically to the allocator, but it was more, the read I got was that this was just like too much all at once. We only had a month and a half or so to digest this, and so since that proposal failed, we at Timewave have been very intentional about building this in a way that is not specific to the Cosmos Hub. It's not even specific to Cosmos. Like right now, just as an early implementation, it does only work with Cosmos chains, but immediately this has always been in the effort of building something that is interchain. But Bitcoin, ETH, Solana, every chain is a part of the interchain. Every crypto native organization is our target market. We are bullish on humans coming together on the internet to form organizations. And we are also bullish on those organizations coming together to create positive outcomes for each other. So I'm not necessarily a Cosmos maxi. I am an interchain maxi. I hope Cosmos Hub does well. I hope the whole Cosmos ecosystem does well. But I think it's also really important to recognize the shared values we have with pretty much anyone who's writing smart contracts, believes in crypto. We do have shared values. And so far, we've been spending a lot of our time, almost all of our time, building these trustless situations, 100% adverse, leave no room for trust. And I think that's a really great foundation to start. I think that should be the goal for many things. But in doing so, there actually is a lot of trust in these networks that isn't being expressed. Like, for example, Neutron and Osmosis, like they could have been totally at each other's throats, been like totally competitive. But by introducing this new primitive in there of covenants, of being able to share liquidity, wait, now they're sharing liquidity. Now there isn't vitriol. Now there's more shared alignment there that really changes the narrative, changes the perspective, changes what's possible. And so if we can do that within the Cosmos, like the traditional Cosmos ecosystem, what's going to happen when we start seeing Bitcoin L2s partnering with ETH L2s, when we see ETH protocols partnering with Solana protocols? Like, I think there's a lot that can happen here where we think a little less on purely tribal lines and think a little deeper about why is it that we're here? How are we going to find people that share our values and that are going to help us achieve our goals? And that's really what we're working towards.
Yeah, I think like similarly to you, I see the vision and the technology as separate from the hub. I mean, there's no doubt that Cosmos technology and the Cosmos vision, which has really morphed now into the modular thesis and vision for how we scale blockchains, is one of the prevailing narratives and theses in this space. As an early Atom holder, investor, believer in the hub and the prospect for the hub to be a place where there's a lot of economic activity, where Atom is a collateral asset, a widely accepted collateral asset, that has been a little bit more disappointing. And the way I usually talk to people about this, and I share, is like I see the Cosmos vision and technology, sort of similar to the Linux stack. In the 90s, there were all these nerds fighting about how, like, which distro and was the best, and whether you should use KDE or GNOME or whatever, window manager, and like, but all of that was built on this shared infrastructure, which was the Unix kernel and the Linux kernel, and like the kind of suite of applications there. As a result of all of that open source work and those like internal battles, we got things like iOS and Mac OS and cloud computing, and trillions of dollars worth of market capitalization value being built on top of this, like on top of this great platform, Android, like nearly every connected device, your car, your TV, whatever. But, if you invested in Fedora thinking that, or like Red Hat thinking that that was going to be the next big thing, I don't even know if those companies are public. I imagine they are. I don't know what they're trading at today. But, those investors might be, thinking today, like, all right, that investment is not, like, investing in Apple would have done probably a lot better than investing in those other companies. So that's just kind of like my perspective is like, as a really early believer in the hub, I've been disappointed about, its ability to really gather enthusiasm about people like building there, even with shared security and partial set security. Maybe Atom Wars kind of switches things. There's still hope, as you say, but that time window that Zaki mentioned on that panel it's getting shorter. It's getting shorter and shorter, and they're buying time. I think the hub's buying time by adding these like Atom Wars, I think, buys it some time. Partial set security buys it some time. Things like Valence, right, being built on the hub also increases the value, I think, of this shared economic security zone. But other shiny things are attracting the attention of developers, and those are EigenLayer, those are Babylon, those are Movement, and so on. And so I'll leave it there unless you have something to add to that.
No, I think we are building on Neutron. We have a really great relationship with them. Again, we have a lot of friends at the Cosmos Hub, but again, like, this is not Valence is not a Cosmos project. It is an interchain endeavor. There is a lot of value to be had in working across ecosystems. And the IBC is great. It really is a really great stepping stone. We are building on IBC. We're leveraging CosmWasm. There's a lot of the interchain stack and the technology, as you say, that we're very bullish on. So bullish that we're incorporating it into our own product. But yeah, we are an interchain endeavor. Whether you are on Bitcoin, ETH, Solana, or a Cosmos chain, like, we are there to service you.
Excellent. I want to talk a little bit about protocol and monetary policy a little bit, because this Valence is kind of enables protocol monetary policy, programmatic protocol monetary policy. As you guys are building this technology, what are some of the kind of early examples of monetary policy that you think makes sense for protocols? And again, kind of departing from traditional finance and thinking purely in the scope of like blockchains and what they enable. What kind of ideas are sort of emerging here, the design space for monetary policy that might, as Valence grows and interacts with more and more chains, start to become sort of common practice?
Mm-hmm. So maybe I'll start by describing some monetary policy that already exists, and then talk about types of monetary policy that Valence will unlock. So we have Bitcoin with its monetary policy, right? We will have 21 million Bitcoin, period. We will issue it on this schedule that halves every 4 years. Like, that is a monetary policy. ETH also has its own monetary policy. When do they inflate? When do they burn? All of that. Cosmos Hub has its monetary policy. Like, there are already forms of monetary policy. However, if we're looking at TradFi, there is no central bank in the world that says, hey, we're going to print $1 trillion this year and $500 billion next year and $250 billion next year. It doesn't happen like that. For example, the Federal Reserve, like they have goals. The goals are low inflation, 2%, like low unemployment. What do we need to do from a monetary policy perspective with interest rates and whatever else to reach those goals? And so I don't expect Bitcoin to change its monetary policy. I don't expect ETH to change its monetary policy. I think those have been very successful for each of those ecosystems. But going forward, if you have a new token, if you're doing a new chain, what are you going to do to differentiate yourself relative to what has come before? And one of the things that you're going to want to do is use the latest, greatest tools and really use everything at your disposal to carve out a new niche for yourself, to add value in a different way. And one of the ways that Valence is unlocking this is by doing these shared liquidity deals, by being able to borrow and lend liquidity. There are a lot of very big banks that borrow liquidity from the Federal Reserve. We could develop similar mechanisms for blockchains where someone might be able to borrow liquidity directly from the Cosmos Hub or Neutron or a Bitcoin DAO, like a Bitcoin L2. And right now, these deals are happening in a very clunky manner. So you have to pass a governance proposal. The number in that proposal is pretty arbitrary. Like why is Stride getting 450,000 Atom and not 4.5 million? Like where did that number come from? Who's responsible for negotiating these? When you put it to a proposal, it's an all or nothing thing. You're getting all or nothing. Almost every single deal that I'm aware of has been free of interest. You're just doing it. But these are often situations where one party has a significantly more liquidity than the other party. And the party that has less liquidity, all else equal, is getting the better end of the stick, better end of this deal. And so what Valence is doing is creating the tools to really rationalize this market, to lower the obstacles in the way of these protocols lending its liquidity, creating additional tools for protocols to profit from the lending of its liquidity. So it's not just a giving away for free. It's not purely a cost center. It's actually now a way to have upward pressure on your token. And so there are many DAOs, protocols, blockchain, et cetera, today that would benefit from this. Again, I don't think Bitcoin or ETH are going to pick this up, but a Bitcoin L2, an ETH L2, Solana DAOs, if we are interacting with not just big whales, but rather the same governance entity that has the ability to change the inflation rate, to change where that inflation is directed, to define interest rate functions where you will charge more interest as there's more demand for it. All of these are the design space that we're playing in to help create this crypto native institutional capital layer.
So Max, we've already talked about the end game earlier in the podcast. Why is this the thing that you want to spend your time on? Like, why is this important to you? And why do you think that building protocols that are able to have programmatic monetary policy, that are able to engage in economic activity with other protocols, is an important step, an important evolution in crypto?
I appreciate this question. So this really starts with our values of long-term permissionless collaboration. And if we have these values, first I have a desire to find people that share these values with me. And I also have a desire to make sure that those with whom I share values thrive. And so what is the thing that we can build to help ensure that people that share these values are able to outperform people who do not share these values? And we've chosen to sort of instantiate these values, if you will, in this way, because we also see this as arguably the largest opportunity in crypto at the moment. And we believe that for three reasons. One is that institutional markets tend to be larger than individual or household markets, and we're talking about the crypto native institutional market. Two is that shared security has really been the biggest winner of the past cycle, and we're big fans of them. But we're seeing even more shared liquidity deals happening than shared security. So we think the shared liquidity market is larger than the shared security market. And three, unlike shared security that comes from a single ecosystem, so you're either getting security from the hub or from EigenLayer and Ethereum or Babylon and Bitcoin, a shared liquidity layer has a natural aggregation. It is more capital efficient to have a single liquidity interoperability layer. You can get better execution. It's more efficient. And we were the first ones to see this opportunity. We have a really exceptional team building it. And this is actually going to primarily be a political challenge to get this done. But what is a political challenge? You know, a political challenge is like meeting people and humans and getting alignment. And that is, back to our core values, what we want to do. We want to find those people in these various ecosystems that believe in including and transcending, like being a part of something that is bigger than themselves. So, sharing values, finding those people, and making sure that we thrive together is really what it's about.
Great. So where can people find out more about Valence? Are there white papers, blog posts, things that people should be reading? And what should people be reaching out to you, and for what purpose specifically?
Yep. So you can check out Timewave Labs on Twitter. You can also check out Valence Zone on Twitter. Again, Timewave is the devco. Valence is the protocol that we're contributing to. Our blog on the Valence website is probably the best place for information at the moment. We do have some forum posts scattered about that maybe one day we'll anthologize, but right now, valence.zone will be your best place.
Excellent. Well, Max, thanks for coming on. Thanks for allowing the Interop to be the first place that you talk about Valence. It's been really interesting getting to learn more about the protocol and kind of long-term vision here. And this resonates with me that the next phase is to bring in the crypto institutional capital, that crypto is not going to grow and become its own sovereign financial ecosystem if the institutions can't also become a part of the economic fabric that makes up this great ecosystem. So it feels like the right path forward.
Yeah, Seb, it's been an honor being here. Thank you so much for giving me a platform to be the first place to share about what we're building via voice and not just via tweets or text. This has been a great conversation.
Thanks, and see you at Nebular.
See you at Nebular.